Hello there. This is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates. I apologize for my live stream attempts today that probably showed up on many of your computers and phones. You probably were entertained by it. I did have somebody say that they were quite entertained by it. Some of them had no sound. Some of them had me in a little box up in the corner. Some of them had scary, ghost-like, monster-like reverberations of me saying the same thing over and over again. None of them actually worked. But I'm hoping by Tuesday night I'll have it figured out. I'm a very determined man, and I have good help. So I'll probably be there Tuesday night. It might be entertaining, but it'll probably be working properly. But apologize for that. That was a little complicated. So I have a video today called The Real Narcissists. And I was inspired, in fact, by the latest issue of Psychology Today. It's the September-October issue. I swiped it from a coworker. I read it, and I'm very unhappy with the cover story of Psychology Today, written by a Rebecca Weber, journalist from New York City. I'll start with a quote. She writes, "Is narcissism really so widespread or on the rise in the general population? A growing consensus among psychologists says no, it isn't. True pathological narcissism has always been rare and remains so. It affects an estimated 1% of the population." This is the cover story of Psychology Today, for God's sakes. 1% of the population, that prevalence hasn't changed demonstratively since therapists started measuring it. Most, but not all, alleged narcissists today are innocent victims of an overused label. Are you fucking kidding me? Let me read that again, in case you didn't get it. Most, but not all, alleged narcissists are innocent victims of an overused label. This is Psychology Today, the cover story. That was the beginning paragraph. I'm a little stunned. I feel powerless. If I didn't want to rip the magazine to shreds, I would want to cry. It's a little bit like being in Nazi Germany in the early 1930s, and the leading psychology journal giving 2 thumbs up to Hitler. He's a good guy, fine man, good character, bright future for our country. Just before he started World War II and killed 6 million Jews. Somebody with the power to make decisions on what goes on the front cover of Psychology Today, I believe has some kind of dog in the hunt. I posit that they either are they themselves, or their parents, or their spouse, or their clients are in fact narcissists. I believe we found the real narcissists. Whoever put this on the cover, because they've got an agenda. In one of my favorite movies, The Usual Suspects, Verbal Kent, who really secretly was Kaiser Soze, said the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he did not even exist. And I'm telling you, there are political forces that would place an article like that on the front cover of Psychology Today. You and I know that there are millions and millions of people like you and I out there suffering unspeakable pain caused by a plague, a vicious plague of cluster B abuse. Monsters. Prevalent. Plague. And most of the therapeutic community of professionals don't even know that we exist. How is that possible? Partly it's possible because of bullshit like this. I feel like I'm attempting to have a voice for a population of people who are invisible. We are treated by our culture as if we do not exist. And you know what? We exist by the millions. It seems perhaps that maybe some of the agenda with these licensed PhD psychologists using only approved tests, they are the only ones who can accurately diagnose a narcissist. All of us people out there with YouTube channels who are spouting all this knowledge, the Sam Vactins of the world, all the people who are talking about this subject, the Spartan Life Coach, we don't know anything, but somebody with a PhD in psychology and an instrument, a test, they're the only ones qualified. It didn't take a brain surgeon to diagnose a really bad narcissist. They reek of it. My former fiance went to a psychological practice and had a test because she was wondering if maybe she was borderline. Guess what? She showed up as not being borderline, she told me. But she was about as borderline as any woman on the planet. I'm saying that psychology today is highly manipulative. They don't believe in the word, but they put it on the fucking cover. You know why? It sells magazines. Do you know why it sells magazines? Because there's millions of people out there talking about it. It's the hottest thing in psychology on the internet. And they damn well know it. So they put it on the front cover to sell magazines and then say, guess what? The devil don't even exist. That's manipulation. They say that 1% of the population is affected. Everything I've read says the number is close to 15%. And if the number is 15%, those people have parents, they have children, they have spouses, they have ex-spouses, they have bosses, they have employees, and we're all getting our guts ripped out. The numbers, in my mind, who's affected by this plague of narcissism, it's closer to 80 to 90% of the population, not one. How could you be so off of reality? It's stunning. I have to admit that even as much as about a year and a half ago, my take on the whole narcissist thing was I didn't like it. I had so many people coming in saying my husband's a narcissist, my wife's a borderline. And for personal reasons of denial about my borderline mother and my former borderline girlfriends and my current borderline girlfriend, I used the terms counterdependent, which is sort of like a narcissist junior, and codependent, which isn't a borderline at all. I wrote borderlines out of existence, basically. And you know what? I learned the hard way. I learned cruelly. To say that I was kicked in the teeth and disemboweled and lit on fire is understating the matter by a borderline. They're dangerous people. And everybody, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but y'all know that there are so many of us out there who have experienced this once, twice, 3 times. And I'm flabbergasted. The article, if you'll read it, it was poorly written. It was all about the cover and using that big word that sells magazine, narcissist. It was rambling. It was shallow. It was uninsightful. I'll go through and talk about what was covered after they manipulatively used the word to sell magazines and then said it basically didn't exist. They said some narcissism is both good and healthy. They used as an example Don Draper from Mad Men. If you guys haven't watched Mad Men, you haven't seen the best example of a narcissist in the history of media, in my opinion. Great show, great character. This knuckle-headed writer didn't watch the whole series, evidently. Early Don Draper, in the first three seasons or so, was the prototypical arrogant, lying, cheating, 60s man who took hold of power and ruled the world with arrogance and just alcoholic oblivion. But as the show progressed, the man was broken. He was a mess. He went through 2 divorces. He kept quitting his job and just disappearing. He would go on drinking binges. He was suicidal. He was a horrible father. And he kept having flashbacks. Their point was that they also said it, Don Draper and Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, the lumberjack looking guy who sang about how handsome he was. That's their understanding of what narcissism is an arrogant man who's good looking, who's vain. And they didn't watch Mad Men because the show was brilliant, the character was brilliantly played, and they showed a broken, sad, wounded little boy. And he wasn't arrogant anymore. In the very first season, his secretary was Peggy, and in the season before the end, he was working for her, and he was eating his pride. The next paragraph, they said that perhaps narcissism is really about depression. There's a link to depression. There was a little section where it said the DSM-5 girlfriends, and it had a little picture of 4 or 5 women sitting around, and it talked about a little screenplay where 4 or 5 women sat around talking about their narcissistic boyfriends and their narcissistic husbands, and one woman disagreed, so they called her a narcissist. it's basically poking fun at people who just talk about this issue. And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who wrongly accuse their spouse of being a narcissist, but it's not 1% the accurate number. It's nowhere close. And this is supposed to be the leading voice for psychology in our culture. There was a little paragraph on are they made or are they born? There was a little discussion about the millennial generation being called narcissistic. She just went from one thing to another thing to another thing, none of it related. She was just chit-chatting about the subject in general, but the point was made. Buy our magazine and we'll tell you this stuff hardly exists. They said that narcissists, many of them that are even diagnosed accurately, have sparks of empathy. And in the last paragraph, dear God, she wrote, an emerging body of research suggests that you can unblock the blocked empathy of people who are narcissistic by continually focusing them on relationships, community, and connection with others. It makes sense. Unhealthy narcissism is a way of coping with an attachment insecurity. By increasing that security, narcissism drops, the writer says. That may be the most promising takeaway from the recent new research on narcissism, says Craig Malkin, a lecturer at Harvard Medical School and the author of Rethinking Narcissism. I bet he's got a dog in the hunt. He says, we used to think that it couldn't be changed, but now that Craig Malcolm has done some research, he knows that it can be healed, these 1%. You know what that's like? That's like saying you can turn a wolf into a lamb by having the wolf have relationships, community, and connection with the lambs. A wolf is a wolf. Ain't going to turn out well for the lambs. You ain't going to turn a wolf into a lamb. A wolf is a wolf. A narcissist is a narcissist. I'm ashamed to be a therapist. If this is what comes in the mail, I'm ashamed to be a therapist. And I'm afraid for our world because there are political forces at work that are keeping this thing undercover. Just like there were political forces at work that did not recognize who Hitler was. Just the other day, I was talking with a real strong expert in narcissism, and she was saying that hardcore profiling is going to be necessary. But I said, well, not in my mind, because our family practice, our marriage practice, we only deal with an occasional minor, mild narcissist. Not the real, murderous, super manipulative, scary, monstrous fellows. The next day I got a call from a family. I didn't even get a call. The lady walked into the waiting room. She just walked in and she just happened to catch me. And there's a narcissist that just blew my mind, the stories she told me. And we're working on a possible intervention with this individual. So I don't normally get this animated, but I'm really angry. Somebody has an agenda. Somebody is not listening to the people. All you people who respond to these videos, you're not a bunch of nuts. And all we people who make the videos, most of us, I don't know which end am I, we're not a bunch of nuts. We're onto something. Most of us experienced it ourselves, and then we started talking about it, and all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of people are responding to us. Sam Vaknin has 10 million views. Spartan Life Coach has 6.5 million views. We've only been talking about it here since December, and we've got 1.5 million views. There's people out there suffering. I was at a gathering of YouTube video makers, and one lady says sometimes she makes videos just to go on a rant. And I told her that probably wasn't a good use of her YouTube videos. And now I've turned around and gone on a rant. I guess I want to say this, that we all have a responsibility to our culture. The psychological equivalent to Hitler is on the loose. And I'm not saying let's be weird or paranoid or overly zealous, but when the leaders in our culture are putting a blind eye to it, we have a responsibility to use grassroots, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, whatever, to make the world stand up and notice, so that hopefully people like me a year and a half ago, when this information could have protected me, it could have saved me if I'd have known it. But I had to get run over by a huge truck that almost killed me in order to learn. So we're all called. We all have a calling. If you've gone through this, look around and think about mothers and sisters and brothers and spouses and ex-spouses and children and grandchildren, and see what percent of the people you know who've gone through this. And you can be there with a link to a video, a link to a book. Don't give them no fucking Psychology Today, though. Anyway, thank you for watching today. If you haven't joined our YouTube channel, do that. Get some books at familytreecounseling.com. Thank you for watching. God bless.